and welcome to Empowered by My Design, a platform where we come together to discuss the beauty of understanding our unique human design and our unique differentiation, which helps us to recognize our beauty, divinity, power, vision, purpose, and all in all, it helps us achieve and reach more fulfillment in our lives. We're discussing subjects that are relevant to the journey of deconditioning, and we hope that you will enjoy this episode. I was talking with someone yesterday about the concept of homogenized advice, like that, how there's so many voices online. There's so many, everyone's telling you how to do things, and it could be like an overload of so many different advices. And she was telling me how she's struggling to make sense of it. And I was smiling and I was like, honestly, it's that is actually going to get worse and worse and worse, because everyone is wanting to share their truth, which is beautiful. And I think it's natural, and it's what I think we're here to do, is to share our truth. But the most important thing in that experience is to recognize that it's their truth and realize that you have to get in touch with your truth. And in order to know what's your truth, you literally have to study yourself. And we started this whole conversation of like why is it so important to know yourself? And why is it so important also to know the other person's nature, like the differentiated nature between the two, because it's just so ingrained in our programming, in our conditioning, to consider other people's opinions, which, it's natural. It's just, it's part of like how we do life. But it becomes like this very non-specific advice that could be very, very dangerous. And I was telling her the whole story with regards to how I placed this one person on a pedestal for so many years. And I literally, everything that I did was processing the truth in the moment through his lens. And I didn't even realize that for years. I just took it as if that's the truth. And I told her that the more I did that, the more I went into that journey, into that devotion, you could say, into that, the more I unconsciously conditioned myself. And ultimately what I realized after a while, after I started like having more of a perspective and living by myself and having kind of like coming back to my own truth, I realized that ultimately I'm the one who's doing that, and I'm also the one who can undo it. And so it was a really beautiful conversation of understanding conditioning versus deconditioning. And it all started from her sharing about what she's watching online and how confusing it is. And I'm like, yeah, well, another reason why studying human design is so important, so helpful. Yeah.
That's an interesting thread to explore. I think a lot of times when we're talking about conditioning, we're talking about our caregivers in childhood and society and peers and stuff. But that's such an interesting thing to reflect about. How are we continuing to condition ourselves by what we're consuming or the thought loops we have that we're taking for granted, or habits, or yeah.
It also shines a light on the different types, the different aura types in human design, because I mean, this is such a big topic with homogenized guidance, and then also how it can be particularly dangerous for projector types, because we're really, really susceptible to conditioning, which is what we're both here for and also need to be aware of, because we take it on and we taste it and we experience it and we learn from it. So we can't avoid it, but we can also become more aware. We can deepen our awareness. And the only way that we can do that is through studying systems. And in human design, like generators, which is a majority of the population, really can just focus on knowing themselves. But projectors need to know the system and how the system helps us know ourselves. And then manifestors just need to know their impact on others, while reflectors are just kind of watching it all, like watching us all run around trying to figure out our true self. And so it's kind of this funny, complex game, if you think about it, just like how to know who you are, how to know who you are, how to know who other people are, and how we live our lives and interact with other people. And like, I see it this way from like the just looking at aura types, but then you get down, you start to get deeper and deeper, like into these layers. It's like the tip of the iceberg, you know? And then you just realize there's just all of this mass of an iceberg underwater that's just complexity and uniqueness. And the like little tip of the iceberg is where people just hang out when they're like looking at things online and they're looking around them outside of them, and that's just all this little stuff, just testing out all these different little tips of the iceberg, like which one is mine. And then when you really know yours, it's like then you dive under the water, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like ooh, that's like the rich experience right there. Like that feels like unlimited, just unlimited. And that's the beauty of what we're like doing here, getting really, really deep into this system, because we have to learn the system. We have to look at other people and how they live the system in order to really get to know our iceberg. So, love this topic.
That's so fascinating. I'm just like constantly like to me it's I'm constantly realizing that this is it's a no-brainer to be able to really um to see how much it can change our lives in the way that we relate to each other if people realized that we are energetic beings. We are all like it's like we're wired differently to the earth. We're wired like or to the cosmos, however you want to look at it. It's like we're all energetic beings, auric beings, whatever, but we function completely differently. And once you have the ability to understand the differentiated functioning or the differentiated nature of each person energetically, you can start put it together and see that there's actually a logic to the symbiotic relationship of energy. Because I mean, yes, there's going to be generalized understanding of, like, for example, the aura types. That you can make generalizations about what's correct for them. Like us projectors, we definitely have to learn to recognize ourselves, to deeply recognize ourselves in order to be seen and recognized by others and invited, and therefore compensated and taken seriously for our advice. And that's a general rule amongst all projectors. But then there's also the uniqueness of the projector and their unique offering, their unique gifts, their unique insights, abilities. And so it's so important to be able to recognize all these levels or layers of how energy works. And so far, in my experience, most people are mostly clueless about how energy works, not even in the general sense of things, like not even the recognition of, oh, this is a projector. And so um, I can assume how to work with them or how to address them. Most people don't even know these details, let alone the more complex stuff. So what I am concluding is that we need so much patience with people in order to share with them the complexity of energy, in order for them to understand that it is very detail oriented, very complex to actually know how to address an individual correctly, how to respect their nature, and how to relate correctly. There's so much there. It's an endless place of discovery that I'm finding both exciting and also challenging, because it takes a quality of speech, a quality of relating, a quality of explaining, and patience.
Yeah, I think that's where I think this sort of topic in regards to projectors is where a lot of that projector bitterness can come into play, when we as projectors get frustrated or upset or disappointed that folks aren't treating us the way we think we should be treated. And it's a tricky, I think it's a tricky thing for us to go through. And I think it's a process for each person. And I think depending on how someone has been raised and their connection with their self, like how much um, they're willing to endure, or they kind of expect to endure. Like
Mm-hmm.
for myself, I just kind of endured a lot of that for many years until I finally looked inward enough and started taking care of myself enough that I could recognize my own worth and my own value. And then from that place, whenever the the lack of recognition or um, the treatment of myself that wasn't the way that I felt like I should be treated,
Mm-hmm.
when those situations came up, then it didn't trigger bitterness in the same with the same intensity that it had when I was younger, because it was like, well, I recognize my value, and so this is an opportunity to communicate how I am and what I need or what would feel more respectful of me. Or it's an opportunity to be like, it's never going to work with this person or this setting or this organization because there's just not an alignment here. Um, so I think it's an example of how this information can be empowering if we are attuned and have the perspective on it from that place and from like an internally led place rather than like an outwardly
Mm-hmm.
focused place, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is like, that's so beautiful and so wise. And this is a reminder of um, the importance for projectors to understand the mechanics of how they work, because realizing why there's a lack of recognition, where the bitterness is coming up, and like what needs to be seen and understood, because the only person that is going to advocate for that is yourself or another projector. And usually it occurs with people that are unaware of how you want to be treated. So that does bring up the point of like advocating for your boundaries and your own worth and recognizing what you need. And this all comes from that education, right? Of like, and that experimentation in your life of like seeing, like not being so personally attached to like the person or situation or environment where you're not being recognized. Like you just said it so delicately, like, oh yeah, it's just not aligned. And then sometimes in the moment it feels so like you're so connected with it because projectors are here to interact with others and focus on others so deeply. And like that symbiosis is so important. Understanding that like we are not islands, we are not just the icebergs floating around in the ocean separately. It's a whole ocean. Like we're bumping into and interacting, and at the way that the energy works that we're learning about is this exchange and this flow of energy between beings. So learning how to connect with others and for others to connect with us in a way that's successful, like that just ooh, is so good. Like when it really, really happens, that's when you know, like, this is my standard of how I want to be seen and respected. And you know, like, who is giving you that, and that you're going to give your full focus. Because as a projector, like, your 100% focus is the greatest gift.
Mhm.
And people will see that. They will see that and they will value because it's not about you. It's about offering that focus, that spotlight, like shining the most beautiful, bright spotlight on another person. And it's for them. It's such a gift. So, like, helping other people to learn, like, this is the gift we offer, and this is how you can see us and recognize us and get something in return from our focus. And it's a two-way street, you know? So, it's so beautiful to think about the details of what this education can do for us and on a very specific level, and how we can engage with learning about it, like learning about our human design, experimenting with it in daily life, learning how to connect with other beings and how to experience, you know, success versus bitterness in our body and like how it shows up for us. And one way that is really a very efficient way to see this is through understanding your motivation and your transference. It's very clear. It's a very clear road sign which road you're going down.
Totally. I was just reflecting um on my profile. I'm a 1-3. So it's like regarding the alignment, like sometimes I can experience alignment that feels very clear to me and it's exciting and it's beautiful. But it's not necessarily guaranteed to always be there. It's almost like you have to pay attention to when the invitation frequency is there and when it's not, because it's a very subtle shift sometimes. And because of the third line qualities, it's like you just have to be always like in the experiment of like, maybe this bond is currently, working and then I can really pursue it, or it's just not. And I have to like let it go. And I am innocence motivation. So I have to be watching the experience and the experiment from a place of literally the observer without any agenda, which can be very, very tough for me as a projector who really wants to serve. I really want to give and to like share my insights, my wisdom, my everything that I've studied in my life, which even beyond human design, it's the qualities of presence that I've cultivated through playing an instrument and meditation practices from my past, and so many things that I feel a richness within me that I want to share. And yet it's almost like I have to be honoring that and basically like just radiate that as something that's there, but not try to too hard to push it on people. To actually, the more I keep it and the more I honor it and the more I stay with it, the more people will come to me and will actually ask me, which is very tricky sometimes, very tricky because it's a part of like living in 3D is that you want to, you want to move things forward, and there's sometimes dealing with basic things like survival, even, like you want to be able to secure the future or whatever. And then in my case, the more I study myself, the more I realize that the only way for me to secure anything is just by coming back to my body as like that's my safety. That's where my security is. And that's very projector, by the way. That's that quality of finding, and I think it's also very 1-3 profile. It's that, there's a big sense of insecurity in the personality. The first lines like wants to understand everything, wants to know, control, etc. And then comes the point where you realize why are you doing all this? Because there's a fear. There's a fear of insecurity. And so this is connected to this whole idea of like alignment. Alignment is it's almost like it only comes from this place of, it's almost like you have to trust yourself. I mean, and speak for myself, I have to come to a place where I just totally surrender. I cannot build on any external expectations. It's all me. It's all from within me. It's all this level of like self awareness. It's like you're coming to a place where that's the only thing there really is. And that's what I find myself right now in my life. That's really very humbling. Yeah. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It makes me think a lot about my motivation as well, because it's such a clear sign to see, like in the body, you can feel yourself in transference so easily. Like it's easier almost than seeing or trying to ask oneself, is this the right decision? Is this the right connection? Does this person recognize me? It's hard to ask those questions to ourselves. We can only experience it, like coming from the other, experience it in the present moment. So transference is something that we can physically like attune to in our bodies. Like you spoke of your innocence and how that feels in your body. And I have guilt motivation. So the transference of hope, I can experience that in my body when I'm being hopeful. In my perspective, it's when I'm releasing responsibility, when I'm getting stagnant, when I'm just thinking, oh, this thing I'm imagining will work out. I'm just going to hope that it's going to work out in this way that I desire it to be. And only when I can meditate on my design and my truth, and when I can get into my guilt motivation, which for me is accountability and responsibility, if I take responsibility for my design, then I can look at myself and I can see in the present moment, like, am I being hopeful that something else will work out? And usually that something else is from my not self, like
Mm-hmm.
a relationship or a job or a situation that I just want it to go a certain way. And when I can accept what I'm really here for and what the truth of the invitation is, the invitation that feels healthy, the recognition that's already there, what's actually aligned for the limitations of my energy and my design, that would be my guilt motivation. So there is a big responsibility that I have to take for my commitment to human design. So that's when I can very clearly tell, like on my own, when I'm not around other people and I'm on my own and I might be getting anxiety or uncertainty or feeling a little bit lost about the decisions I'm making or the direction I'm headed, um, I can sit back with that. Like, well, am I in transference or am I in my motivation? That's the thing I can grab onto the easiest. And um, yeah, I know that Bunny, you mentioned something about the nervous system too, that you actually experience it in your body, which I think is so interesting. Can you share
Yeah,
more?
I mean, does that resonate for the two of you as well? Like, it's actually pretty cool. We all have different motivations. We're um,
Mm.
representing the not the full spectrum, but in some ways the full spectrum. But yeah, we all like I'm need, which is the fourth color. Um, yeah, does it do you guys feel it in your nervous systems too? Or is that a four one thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my nervous system, I sometimes get I can get whacked out by experiences that I don't feel seen, and I feel like my nervous system needs a long time to recover. And it could be the fact that I'm trying to be seen, this desire comes through, like there's some kind of like out of alignment behavior on my part that's not totally in the surrender of the innocence that can whack out my nervous system for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, when you mentioned that initially, I was like, oh, like the nervous system for me, I associate with my undefined solar plexus. But then it had me thinking about how I have just one hanging gate, gate 30, which is the clinging fire. And so it's my Saturn. So whenever I find that I'm seeking or desiring certain experiences, I actually really relate that to my transference of hope. When I'm desiring something certain or specific, I have a certain expectation or outcome. That's where my nervous system gets kind of ramped up on attaching to that. So it's kind of woven into multiple aspects of my design, but I get very attached to that. I get a very heightened state. And then when it doesn't happen as expected, that's when I have a huge crash that usually takes a toll on my health.
Mm.
And because I didn't follow my personal law, I didn't trust my splenic authority, I was so focused on a certain feeling. So this is like the practice with Saturn, the discipline with it, and it is very attached to my guilt or hope, fifth color motivation.
Mhm.
Are there examples where you can see that you could have, I guess, done things that were more of like taking that responsibility or um, improving or fixing things or having more of that like guilt, literally motivation, but you were more surrendered in the hope, like kind of hands off, like overly kind of complacent or something? Or yeah, I'm just curious about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, thank you for asking. Totally. When I was like it is kind of complacent. It is kind of in this flow of like I'm following my desires and I made a decision based off of that. Like hoping that I had this whole imaginative string of events in my head and hoping it would go a certain way. So I made a decision in the moment that went against my intuition. And I also think it was a part of my learning process, even though you could consider it transference or out of alignment. I learned a lot that realigned me from the process of being shattered. And it was during my Saturn return. But I can definitely point to a specific example of saying yes to someone, getting pulled into someone's aura romantically and saying yes to them and following that desire based off of a hope that it would work out.
Mm.
And after that present moment, there was nothing. There was no attachment, nothing worked out. There was no future involved that was kind of constructed in my mind. And, my mind was very much like my not self, all woven together and hopeful that things would go a certain direction for me. And then they didn't. And I met a lot of resistance. It was a lot of bitterness in my life with other people close to me and the situation. My life kind of like reorganized, fell apart and reorganized over time, that I can see how I needed to experience that to get my way back to my guilt motivation and get my way back to my intuition, because there were things I had been ignoring for a long enough time to get to that place where I really was focused on hope. Like it's kind of like this teetering scale. And I was really leaning super hard, like my life will be better. I'll be more successful as a projector if I lean on the hope. So it really knocked me back, like into like, oh, actually, I have to be accountable on my own for my own, like recognize my own projector nature. Like instead of like, I was really seeking this recognition from other people and this elevation or direction from other people. And then, so now I'm like back in my own space again. So you can't have one without the other, like there's going to be bitterness, there's going to be success, there's going to be all of it. It's just seeing and being aware of the depth to what you learned in the experience. And that every single time that you can witness yourself through these experiences, you'll get even deeper or maybe more attuned to your being.
Mhm. So
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, I love that you shared that. And it's such important wisdom for everyone. I think that, I mean, and Rudy knows this too, being 1-3 or third line in general, and Colin, you had a third line phase, but there are no mistakes, because everything that we go through helps us calibrate more to ourselves. And
totally.
I think in specifically in regards to motivation, I think it's easy for the mind to think, I just got to stay in my motivation and I have to just stay out of my transference, but it is a spectrum and it is a back and forth and it is a process. And that the kind of contrasting themes that we each have, that's just part of our life experience. And there's so much wisdom in both places, so I just think you really exemplified that with your example.
Totally. I was gonna share, like given that I'm almost in my 50s, um, I got into human design in my early mid 40s after years and years of having no awareness of my differentiated nature. And it's interesting because the more I dive into studying my nature, the more I can understand the meaning of trusting myself. So back to the third line errors and like appreciating those errors. My particular journey is so much about like having this appreciation for the like seeing the bigger picture of my life, like seeing the what I've actually been through and understanding that it's not only that it was meant to be that way, it's meant to serve other people. So I'm constantly amazed by like that surrender into trust in my journey, trust in my nature, and being able to explain that and share that with other people and inspire them to do the same for themselves. and that's where my healing is, and that's where my health is. And it's very much thanks to human design, because that gave me clarity and a language to speak about this and understand this and be able to make sense of my life, because I was very lost 5 years ago. I was very lost, and I knew that I had a unique purpose, and that it was more than just fitting into, even if it's like a really beautiful, like, collective experience where I'm a part of the whole. And it was such a beautiful journey, but there were so many things there that it just wasn't really aligned with my specific nature. It was almost like I was constantly trying to fit into something that's not me. And I was just so easily affected because I have 6 undefined centers, one completely open. My crown is completely open. And so there's this level of, confusion in a way in my development. And if it wasn't for human design, I don't know exactly. I think I may have continued to to operate from conditioning and experience the bitterness and like just continue to suppress it. And I'm very grateful for myself, for my intuition of giving myself permission to do things differently, think differently, act differently, from a place of I do deserve to trust myself ultimately. And that's why I called that in. I called a system that helps me to anchor in how to do that. So I'm highly encouraging anyone listening to us right now to trust your existence, trust in the fact that you're here embodied, that you're here. It's not just a coincidence that you're here and you have to figure out like the well, there's a reason for you being here, but it's more than anything, it's like you being able to really love that you're here, that understand the beauty of your uniqueness, and yeah, make the most of it.
Yeah, I think human design is a fascinating, and all of these systems, I'm into astrology too. I think all of these systems are a fascinating way for the mind to get behind these concepts and to like get excited about like looking into all these different cool things about ourselves. Like I was always into personality tests and like what category am I in and what are my archetypes, and all of that I think is like really stimulating for our minds. And I think where human design really takes it a step further and allows us to actually embody these things and witness how unique and differentiated we are in our moment to moment existence. And this is where the absolute like necessity and value of the experiment of living our designs really comes into play. And I'm just feeling so passionate about that aspect of the system and how important it is to really embody all of this. It's certainly interesting to study, and it's fascinating to like think about and reflect on, but to for me, I guess with my design, it's having a perspective and an awareness of myself and reflecting on these things, or reflecting on my life and how I live it in the context of these things, I guess. That's what the experiment feels like to me. It's noticing little micro emotions as they sort of pop up. It's, yeah, watching my thought patterns. It's, yeah, I mean, so many examples. I mean, I guess one example that I can share from this week in regards to an insight that I had about me in my experiment with human design. I was on a call and the facilitator said the word relief, somewhat in regards to being emotional, but not specifically. And it was like an aha moment for me because I often feel that feeling of relief in regards to the complexity of the emotional process. And it's an extremely pleasurable feeling for me as an emotional person when that sort of relief, when I feel that feeling of relief. And it's like the emotional process is connected to nervousness and is described as a wave. There's ups and downs, and um, that nervousness is sort of like when things are unsettled, you know, it's like the waters, if we're thinking about waves in a literal sense, it's like the water's murky, it's churning, it's unsettled, you know, there's like, for whatever reason or no reason, you know, it's like things aren't clear, they're turbulent. And to those feelings of relief within that sort of turbulent ongoing process is like, yeah, maybe the waters have cleared or there's a temporary calm in it, and it's like, oh, I can see now, you know, or I'm more settled or that kind of a thing. And it sounds like such a micro thing, but I think it's these little micro moments where our connection to ourselves really comes through. And that's the whole point of all of this, you know? Um, yeah, I guess the context of that relief, I'll just share this too. I feel a sense of relief when I come to my own clarity, but I also can feel a sense of relief when I wait through the process of some sort of a turbulent emotional decision. And sometimes the decision works itself out without me having to do anything. And that's also a huge relief. And that was an amazing insight for myself because I think people in general, and I think also emotional people, often feel under pressure to do something about a situation or to make a decision or give an answer. And that nervousness comes through when the clarity of whatever that answer is just isn't there, you know? And that could be because we actually don't know what we should do, or maybe we do know what we should do, but we don't know how we should do it, you know? If our truth is going to hurt someone else's feelings or let someone down, there's a process between, okay, I know I don't want to do this, but I know it's going to affect them. So how do I move or how do I handle this? You know, that's an example of a phase in the emotional process. I'm not ready to talk to you about it because I haven't determined for myself how I'm going to approach this. So it's like, it's so nuanced, it's so complex. But I think the wisdom of waiting through the process, waiting to find that clarity, is it allows me to come to a sense of how I want to approach something, or it allows the situation to morph and change into something else. And now I don't have to do anything, and both of those things feel relieving to me because it's that intense nervousness has subsided. So yeah, I don't know. That was a cool little thing that happened to me this week.
Thank you for sharing that. That's such a cool example of like getting in touch with your inner authority and your process in your body, and also like synthesizing your like mind perceiving that process. It's like connecting the ties between how we observe the world, how we conceptualize, and observing ourselves in a process. Like you're noticing your body over time in a decision making. And like that's so much of what this human design system is here for. Even though it's a conceptual, like mental system, it's all about like those little micro moments of noticing yourself, witnessing yourself, like the totality of you, not just, the mind thinking about it, but like, oh, that little feeling in your body, maybe it was there before, but you're really seeing it in the present moment and like recording it. And there's a kind of intimacy like there with the self. And like that's really, I guess that's what I refer to when it's like everything like under the surface, under the little surface things we hear, of what's your type, what's your strategy. But then when you really get into those moments of presence with yourself, even though they might be like a second, like you lock it in and you remember it. And that's like the relationship with ourselves that is so delicious. I don't know another word for it. Thank you for sharing that.
That's so beautiful. I was just I really appreciate the all the transpersonal qualities in both of you when I connect the dots to how we interact as three projectors. I oftentimes get lost in my personal reality. And then I hear in I mean, Colleen, you are right angle, so that is still like a personal destiny, but you have transpersonal qualities in your profile. And then Bunny, you are left angle, which is entirely transpersonal journey where it's fascinating to me because like a lot of your process is very much about how to connect the dots with other people and how to be able to like make sense of the connection with others. Whereas for me, I'm almost like I was told once that I'm like as selfish a projector as can be because I have like very personal experience, but it's not for me, it's for others. But it's from my personal experience that I can help others. But when I listen to both of you are always like there's just something really beautiful in my like personal experience as I'm appreciating your nature more for what it is and for the qualities that you can offer other people as projectors, because what we're sharing here is so much about like the importance of like understanding ourselves for the benefit of others. Like, why are we doing this recording? Why are we showing up online? Because it's that challenging to really show up as ourselves. It's challenging also for other people, and they need that support from us and other projectors. And I feel that in these experiences, when we're talking about all these things, it's like it's a really beautiful opportunity for us to really, speak about this and be completely comfortable, or rather at least intend to be comfortable in our nature, and hopefully also encourage other people to study one's nature or your nature, but start from yourself. But hopefully you'll see that that is available for you with everyone else. You can literally study many people's nature and have that appreciation for that nature. I was just noticing yesterday that on my Neutrino Design app, I've already piled around 250 charts. And I was just telling a friend yesterday, I said, everyone's a case study for me. I mean, I'm a nerd, I'm a 1-3, so I really love studying people, but it's true. It's that quality of like seeing that you could appreciate another person that much more if you actually took a deeper look into their unique differentiated frequency, you know. So when both of you talk, I oftentimes like I recognize that again that I have like a gift to learn from you in your transpersonal uh view and experience, and also yeah, just learning every time more and more about your nature. So thank you for everything you shared. And I also love to see, like, I was just kind of checking the composition between the two of you and see like how you, like, Colleen, you were just basically reflecting on what Bunny was saying, and then I could see how that's reflected in your composite charts. Like, and this is something that could be interesting for people to see in regards to what's the what the energy between two people can create, and how you can, it's like you're nerding on it, yes, but you can actually have fun understanding the the potential and the gift that is in there. So you guys make the channel of logic, and it was very beautiful to see how you're bringing the logic out of what Bunny was sharing, and I was really enjoying listening to that. I was yeah, I'm talking about the beside stuff, but I just yeah, thank you. I hope this makes sense what I just shared.
Yeah, thank you. I love that you brought in this topic. It's one that I've been noticing a lot too in my interactions with people, and just witnessing myself and how I'm oriented to the world. And I absolutely feel like a transpersonal profile cross. I mean, even to the point where some of my bitterness can come from having this orientation and getting upset that other people don't. You know, I see that in myself a lot. And, but that, I think that's just part of it, you know, that's part of being a projector, feeling like you've got all this wisdom, that like what you're seeing has value and matters. And I think all of that is true. And also, everyone's unique, everyone's different, everyone's got something that they're offering. So I'm just watching that I feel this way, and that's okay, you know. But it is interesting. I mean, curious to hear from you, Colin, about what it's like to have two upper trigram lines in your profile, but yet be a right angle cross, what's considered more of a personal profile. So, yeah, that sounds like a fascinating combination.
I mean, I definitely feel similar that like there were times in my life when I was bitter because I felt very transpersonal. And I was like, why is this not working out? Like, I feel like there's a karma here. And I would attach myself to someone else like too intensely. And to learn that I'm a personal destiny was very valuable for me because now that I'm a 4/6, so now that I'm past Saturn return, I'm starting to understand like why it's on the edge from personal to like karmic transpersonal, but it's not quite there because there is a inner journey with discovering like how to connect with others while still maintaining independence and the importance of that personal journey because I was too attached while I wasn't having a successful relationship. I mean, I'm my cross is on the quarter of duality, so there's a lot about becoming one with another and getting to know like just my part and then mechanically how I become enmeshed with another, and getting to know that has helped me a lot because I know that I still have relationships with people that are they feel very transpersonal, but it's been so important for me to learn about like my own destiny as being a part of fulfilling my purpose because it's helped me stand more in my own design and less reliant on other people. So yeah, it's so important to understand how we connect. Like this is like such a topic to nerd out on because there's so many aspects to human design, to like why we connect, why we're attracted to one another, what the energy exchange is it karmic? Is there something that you're learning or investigating in your process, like through the relationship? It's so beautiful. And like one of the most mystical things of all that I see is karmic relationships. When you see someone who has the same sun and earth or the same nodes of the moon as you, and you can analyze the relationship, there's something so mystical in that that really puts a flavor into this like whole process of like why we are our profile lines, like why we wear this costume in our life, how that's important to your own personal fulfillment of your purpose. And there's answers there that we may not get till the end of our experience here, but that's like part of the trust, and that's what relieves the bitterness for me, like that it really like relieves it because I had put a lot of what I thought my purpose was in other things around me, and to be able to trust that like there is a purpose that will feel successful for me, that will be just perfect for me, and I don't have to worry about finding it because it will just play out. And that has been the most acceptance and the most relief that I've gotten lately. So, yeah, thank you for asking about that.
Hmm. It is it's very exciting what we're talking about. All of these topics, they're it's like that's why we're doing this. We're getting together to talk about the things that we care about the most. And we're just in the moment with the process, and we're also like I just find myself always in a place of like again humility because I don't have a defined throat. I want to be able to express myself properly and share from my experience and my wisdom. And yeah, and at the same time, I'm also learning how to speak properly and deconditioning that and to be able to, yeah, just be comfortable within myself as myself and trust that, yeah, trust that I could just be back to innocence motivation, and yeah, and I want to connect the dots also to this platform empowered by my design, why we wanted to share this with the world and you know what we're actually creating here is we're creating a movement. We're coming from a place of really just wanting to be healthy in our nature, be healthy in our experience of life, and connect with other people who are on the path of self-discovery and self-awareness. And given that we're moving towards a very different frequency, we're already feeling some changes, but there's a beautiful almost like a promising change that's ahead of us, that is pointing out to the fact that sovereignty and self-awareness and the recognition of like this the worthiness of the individual versus like the energy we've had before where we had to fit into a tribe. We had to really work hard to work within the rules that were presented to us of the tribe. That energy of, you know, bargains, the energy of contracts, the energy of really like we were so conditioned in a way to fit in. And that's the cross of planning, right? That we've been in since 1615. And that affected everything in life. Every aspect of life was conditioned with this frequency. And that's what Earth is meant to experience, that all these like what we call the shifts between the crosses, these in human design we call it the global crosses, global cycles, right? Every 412 years. This you can see that as like the spiritual curriculum of Earth, you know, like we can track it back like about 16,000 years or so, and we can see how all these energies, these frequencies that Earth been through is what it needed in order to evolve, in order to move forward. And so now we are at this magical spot that is right before the shift to the next cycle in 2027, February 2027. And it's this shift from that tribal need for fitting in, that kind of quality, to the quality of the moving out of this kind of energy that's, you know, it worked for many years, but it doesn't work anymore. Right now, we're feeling it the most. It's like there's so many things that are changing, and everyone's talking about the shifts, and the systems are collapsing. The monetary system is collapsing. The education system is changing. The political system is erupting, and everything all over the world is feeling like there's so much chaos. And yet the good news is that the new cross is called the rising of the sleeping phoenix. Well, we're rising literally out of the ashes of the crumbling of the old world, which is very exciting, because what's the phoenix? The phoenix is the sovereign. It's your soul recognizing its sovereignty, rising out of the ashes of the system that's literally meant to collapse, because it's like we're cosmically scheduled to shift out of that energy. It's not even up to us. It's cosmically decided. And so it's very symbolic that we're dealing with these energies right now. And that's why human design came here. It literally arrived 1987, 20 years before the shift of the cycle, to prepare us to learn how to embody this new energy. And it's completely different consciousness, completely different language, completely different way of doing things for humanity. That's why it's so challenging in a way to start anchoring this system and this language, because most people are still caught up in the old energy. They're still not even necessarily aware that the energies are shifting. I mean, you can feel it, but can you tell that it's cosmically scheduled? No, most people don't realize that that's how things work. You know, in a way, we're pretty conditioned. You know, like looking back at history, very few people have an awareness of these global cycles and how they've affected us. Like you barely hear about that. I don't even really know how long the knowledge about the global cycles have been around. So this is all very new. It's very exciting, but it's very new. And so I'm inviting everyone who's listening to us to research about the global cycle shift. And there's plenty of information on Google, and it's getting more and more